One Piece. One Piece. If you've been following my podcast with Star, you know that I love One Piece. We did an entire episode ranking all the arcs, and we just kind of spent most of our Pride episode talking about it. Interpret that as you will. But yes, I am a massive One Piece fan. From its endearing and memorable characters to its rich world building, its emotional story arcs, fun action, lore and mysteries, and its strong themes of freedom and liberation. While not devoid of issues, there is too much to love about this series, and it has infected my mind and soul. And I'm not alone in this. The amount of people I've seen become completely obsessed with this series is staggering. Is it the best series of all time? Can't say. But I could make an argument for one of the most addictive of all time. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about something very unique about the series, and that is its ability and willingness to have their men be losers. Now, I've been having a bit of interest in loser characters recently. Sure, I enjoy my competent and capable characters. They don't stress me out too much to watch. But sometimes I just want to watch a failure, an incompetent mess trying to figure shit out, and One Piece helps scratch that itch. Now it does have its manly men, its big boys, their big-dicked fellows with their massive honkers. But I'm going to be talking about our favorite men, Sanji, Buggy, and Zoro. Yes, Zoro is a loser. I'll start off with Buggy because he's easiest to explain. He just really doesn't belong past the beginning of the story. Being perfectly honest, if I were to judge Buggy based purely off his appearance in Orangetown, I'd say he's just okay. A perfectly decent early story villain that helps establish the basic formula for what's to come. But that's about it. He's not the most memorable, but he just keeps coming back, way past the point he really should have. Most series probably would have just left him behind around Alabasta, and on my first read through, that's what I thought was going to happen. He doesn't really show up after Alabasta for like 200 to 300 chapters, save for a brief cameo here and there. But then we arrived at Impel Down. God, I love this arc. This arc is the start of Buggy's rise to glory that he does absolutely nothing to earn. Now, the joke of Buggy is simple in concept. Buggy gets surrounded by people who interpret everything that happens around him as his doing that he planned for. He also has some very important connections that lead to the world at large, giving him way more credit than he deserves. But what really elevates the whole joke into something that's still funny 15 years later is Buggy himself. Now, I said Buggy really never evolves past being an early story villain, and Buggy himself knows this. He knows that he does not belong in most of the situations he finds himself. He knows he's the weakest of the room. He knows he is not qualified for any position he occupies. But he just can't help himself. He loves attention. He loves glory. He loves praise. He loves it when his true treat him like a god. So he will do things he knows he shouldn't, because he talks a big game in front of his men and he doesn't have it in him to back out. He's smart enough to realize he doesn't belong where he ends up, but he is too dumb to keep himself out of these situations. He is such a fascinating character that in a lot of ways could easily not work, but through really well done writing is one of my favorite characters. And I love him because he's so pathetic. I'd say he has a high charisma stat, but in reality he just keeps rolling nat 20s and everyone else keeps failing their wisdom saves. And I know he wouldn't work as well if he was a cool, competent villain, because he didn't fully work for me in the live-action adaptation. Now, this is not shitting on Jeff Ward's performance, he did a fantastic job, but the way he was written was in a more typical manner for a villain. He was cool, he was menacing, he played each situation with whatever he had available, and that's just not as interesting for me. If it works for you, great. I know a lot of people thought he was hot, I agree. But I remember watching the live action and I remember thinking, Buggy would do what he did in Impel Down on purpose. I can never give Buggy any credit. It was good, but it lacked that unique element that makes Buggy in the original so damn captivating. You just want to see how far Oda can take the joke. Hashtag Buggy for Pirate King. Now, Buggy is super fun, but I also absolutely love Zoro. And I'm not talking about the same Zoro most people talk about, not the cool, confident badass we all love to watch fight. Not the second in command who helps Luffy keep Luffy on the right path. The guy who canonically has the biggest tits in the Straw Hats. I love it when he's just a massive fucking idiot. Remember, this is the guy who was told to walk up a flight of stairs in front of him, and he turned left. The guy who was trapped in wax and his plan to get out was cutting off his own legs. The guy who just got on the wrong ship and took a nap. Rarely met this man one time and said he looked dumb. This is not a man who keeps cool under pressure, he just doesn't have enough brain cells to think about the situations he's in. Now, Zoro is cool. I've rewatched the Zoro vs. King fight a few times at this point. He's badass, he's hot, we all know this. But fans will often ignore the fact that Zoro is often thinking on the same level as Luffy. Because he's strong and is usually blank-faced, people act like he's the coolest guy out there who never falters and just... No. Now, I have a theory for this that I'll explain later. Now, this character has been the subject of much discussion in the One Piece community. He is easily one of the most polarizing main characters that a lot of people have a lot of opinions on. And I'm of course talking about Sanji. Where do I begin? Sanji is a complicated character. He's obviously written with a lot of care, with a lot of thought. Unless Oda thinks something is funny, then he will just throw all that away. It's hard to get a full read on this guy, and it's not hard why. And this comes down to one of his biggest character traits, his love of women. This is most people's biggest takeaway with his characters, and it's pretty obvious to see why. So much so that when they were announcing the live action, they went out of their way to say that they were toning that stuff down. And honestly, I have complicated feelings about it. Thriller Bark, Fishman Island, and Punk Hazard. I genuinely cannot stand his character during these arcs. It's like Oda forgot Sanji is a three-dimensional character who has stuff going on outside of women and just ups the perv humor to 11, and it gets really fucking old really fucking quick. And I've seen some people say that this is part of Sanji's incel arc. As time goes on, he gets more creepy and desperate in his pursuit of women. And I'm not going to deny this reading for anyone. I get it. Unfortunately, I don't think it's that deep. I think Oda just found it funny. And that's sad, because like I said earlier, Sanji is a fully realized character. He has a very well-established moral code that affects everything he does, and his multiple backstories do a lot to explain all this. And like Zoro, he is also capable of being extremely badass. He saves the day on multiple occasions, has some really fun fights, and also gets off many cool one-liners. He is both cool and pathetic. And again, just making him cool doesn't work for me as I felt about him in the live action. Again, not gonna shit on Tasca's performance, he did a fine job. I will shit on him for being a Zionist, fuck that. But when you just make him cool, he loses a lot of what made him interesting. He works because he's a fun blend capable of working in a lot of different contexts. Same with Zoro. These are both fully realized characters who work in ways very similar to each other, but also in ways that mirror to each other. Zoro is toned down while Sanji is overly emotional. Zoro doesn't have any insecurities about his past, while Sanji has plenty. But both work as hard as possible to support Luffy and the crew, and it's interesting to see the difference in audience reactions to both of them. Like I said, Sanji is a rather controversial character, while Zoro is pretty well beloved. While Sanji does have some rather cringe elements about his character, you can tell that a lot of this has to do with masculinity. That's right, I'm finally talking about gender. Let's do it! Now, just on how I'm defining masculinity for this, it's essentially just a list of behaviors, attributes, and duties contributed to and expected of men and boys. In terms of Zoro and Sanji, a lot of their character is based in the pursuit of these values, specifically in terms of the role of protector. Both striving to be calm, level-headed, strong, and reliable people. And if you've seen or read One Piece, you know how important these values are to them. And you know how Zoro and Sanji both succeed and fail at achieving this. Sanji just kind of fails at the masculine ideal. He's overly emotional, bratty, overly kind, depending on some definitions of masculinity, and most importantly, subservient to women. There are truly few words to describe how much of a bottom he is. And for a lot of people, this makes him a bad character, as he's annoying and not cool, ergo, a failure. Zoro, on the other hand, overall succeeds at the masculine ideal. He's powerful, he's straight-faced, not overly emotional, and he doesn't really get affected by women. Zoro's a man's man, the biggest fella. But he's also a failure. He's good at fighting, and useless in almost any other situation. He either just drinks or sleeps. He succeeds so hard at being a manly man, he can't do anything else. But since on a surface level he succeeds at masculinity, he's a good character. And for me, a character isn't good if they're competent, well put together, or not annoying. A character is good if they're able to fulfill their role/purpose in the narrative while being able to understand their character. If a character can do this, I consider them a good character. Whether or not I like them or enjoy watching them, different conversation. But there are many ways a character can serve their story and be engaging to watch, and I get really tired of people only saying that there's a few ways a character can be considered good. Do what you need to do. Just give me more losers. They're fun.